Welcome to Nostalgia Alley. Super, super show. We have Sipiwe Moyo, actor. I hope I got that right.
Sipiwe Moyo.
I got that right.
Very close. So.
And she has a fabulous resume. She's worked in TV, film, off-Broadway, regional theater. She currently is in the hit Orange is the New Black, which I love. She graduated from NYU Tisch, where she studied experimental and applied theater. That sounds fantastic. And she's a member of the Big Apple Playback Theater and Improv Theater Company. And I wanted to ask you.
You know all about me.
I know all about you. I have the secret files from Weller. We know all about you.
They know it all, you man.
Tell me about your journey as an actor.
Well, you know, it's funny because I'm the oldest I've ever been, so it feels like this long journey, but I also feel like I have a long way to go. So that's sort of where I'm at with looking at my career. But since I was little, I've always loved performance, and I've always loved doing accents and impressions of people since I can remember. And since I could articulate that I wanted to be anything, like, what do you want to be? I would say I wanted to be a stand-up comedian like Eddie Murphy.
Wow.
That was back when Eddie Murphy was really popular in all those days. And I shouldn't have probably even been knowing who Eddie Murphy was, because back then his stuff was not really kid-friendly.
Right.
It wasn't the Nutty Professor times. So, you know, went on through life, and around middle school times, I started doing more theater programs, and it really helped me at that time of my life. You know, it's kind of awkward time, you know, in middle school, and finding your place and changes that are happening. And I found that theater was this place when I would do, like, you know, children's theater workshops or programs in the summer, where I just felt so comfortable and had so much fun and made so many friends. So it kind of was like that. And then I ended up going to the School of Fine Arts in Alabama, the Alabama School of Fine Arts, for 7th and 8th grades. And that's where I first was immersed in theater. And I was like, wow. And there was really, I couldn't even believe there was a school that taught that. I was just like, what a...
Pretty great, a dream
you know,
come true.
like, there's a thing, like, you know when you find your thing and then you open up a book and realize there's lots and lots of books about it and there's people who love it. So theater was my thing.
Was your family supportive of you going into the theater?
They were. They always have. They enjoyed seeing me in shows, and I think my first play I was in was called Clowns, and one of the pictures I have on my Facebook, or like, not on Facebook, on my Twitter, is of my dad coming to see me. I think my parents came to see me several times, and they just loved that I loved it, and they enjoyed what I did. So yeah, they definitely were.
When you have a specific part in the theater, how do you prepare for that character that you play?
It really depends on the role, but there's a lot of different ways into a character depending upon it. I once played Henry V, so I just...
Henry V? Wow.
Yeah, so I spent a lot...
How did you pull that off? That's
really
amazing.
All you really should be spending your time on is the lines, because there's lots and lots of them. That turns out that play is mostly him talking in monologue. And when you dig into Shakespeare, there's so much information that it's already there in the words. That if you wanted to start doing all this internal character work, you might just get a little bit off track. It's really so much in the meter and in the poetry and in the words. But for instance, depending upon a character, if they have an accent, I use the accent. I've played a lot of African characters. My heritage is African. My family's from Zimbabwe, and so I've ended up getting roles that were in that vein in different countries. So I once was in a play called In Darfur, which is about the Sudanese civil war. And so I had to do a lot of research on, very hard research on the war and the lives of people there, on the accent. There was a point at which I had to stop doing the research in order to function in my daily life. But really, I just like to do as much research as I can on the world that the person is from, and then use that to excavate the internal life, so those things are happening eventually they meet somewhere in the middle.
Do you somehow identify with the characters you play?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the fun part. That's the fun part. For instance, if I get an audition and it's a type of, say it's a type of job I've never done before, I have to figure out what I have in common with this person. So it's a lot of trial and error and playing, which is really what it is. It's just playing for a living, which is great work if you can get it.
You get paid too. It's fabulous.
It's great work if you can get it. Again, auditions are not paid, but they really are most of the job, to be quite honest. So the role that I play on Orange is the New Black,
Yes.
her name is Adeola. And I would say that on the surface, I really don't have that much in common with her. She's a Nigerian, and I'm, Zimbabwean American. She's in prison, and I'm not. So she's obviously done some kind of crime. Who knows what it was. And her attitude is very different. She's very idiosyncratic and edgy, and I think I present pretty affably and easygoing kind of thing. But it's fun because we all have these sides of ourselves. So you can, in a role, delve into a side of yourself that is not normally who people expect you to be, or maybe acceptable to the law in some cases.
Yeah.
So it's really fun that way.
I find it interesting. The title, Orange is the New Black, what does the title mean?
Well, it's the title of a memoir by a woman named Piper Kerman. And it's the story of how she ended up in prison, even though she is not typically one of the people who statistically is found in prison. So she's an affluent white woman who came from privilege. And so I believe that her titling the book that is a play on the situation she was in, which is that she comes from a background where she could afford, the newest fashions, yes, and live like a really privileged lifestyle. So maybe she used to look at fashion magazines where it says, such and such is the newest trend, but now she was wearing orange prison uniform. So Orange is the New Black was a way of playing on her being privileged and now being in prison.
And she's very much a yuppie. She wants the proper shampoo, the herbal shampoos, which you just don't get in prison.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is it's not like the prison movies from years ago, the James Cagney prison movies. This is a very realistic depiction of what it's like in prison life. And also, it addresses a lot of social issues. What are some of the social issues that it addresses in the series?
So Piper, we're going through, we just finished shooting season 7, so Piper goes on quite a long journey throughout. And you see it through her eyes, more or less. And what you see through her eyes is that prison is filled with all kinds of different people. We don't know because we're not in prison, nor do we hear much about what really happens in prison. They're sort of carted off, shipped away, and the world forgets about them, and we don't really know. There's not, unless you have a personal relationship with someone in prison, it's very hard to know exactly what goes on. So through her story and through this show, we get a lens into some of the backstories that lead people to prison, and it turns out they're actually varied. And there's a lot of circumstances that are not necessarily because someone is an abject criminal, but because of this, where they've come from, whether it be from underprivileged situations, whether it be that they made a mistake, whether it be that they suffer from mental illness, or even that they've taken a stand on something. There's a character on the show who's a nun who was in protest, and she was arrested for her protest. And so you realize there's not just one story. There's many stories and many roads that lead people to
It also touches on issues like immigration, for instance.
That is true. And that is something that happens in season 6. And I can't say much more about it besides that.
We don't want to get you in trouble.
No, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to be...
When we talked earlier...
Edited out.
Yeah, we don't want that edited out. You talked... First of all, it's shot in the Astoria Studios, which it was built in 1921.
Has a very old history.
The Marx Brothers did Coconuts. Their first sound movie was shot at the Astoria Studios. Yeah. When you walk in there, do you feel that sense of history?
Well, first of all, your first day walking there, you're just so happy you have a dang job. You could just skip down the streets. And that feeling never really goes away, even after you become recurring, as I did. It's they have phone booths, and if you go downstairs when we go to lunch, they have all kinds of different artifacts from shows. So they have, artifacts from Nurse Jackie and Men in Black and The Cosby Show, and so many different shows that shot there. All of the old films are up; they're framed, and so you definitely feel like you're a part of a heritage, you're a part of a legacy there. So it's been an awesome experience from through and through.
And you talked about the feeling. There's a scene which you filmed there where they closed the cell door.
Right.
What was that like, the feeling to...
So the scene is actually the first scene where you see Adeola in season 6 is she's in what's called administrative segregation. So that's when you first get to the prison, you are in the orange uniform. Eventually you're put into whatever cell block you're in, and you get that uniform. And you are not in a bunk with a roommate, you're in a cell by yourself, and it's got a big heavy door. What I was explaining to you, because I believe you were wondering how I prepared to be on a show about prison, and I was talking about, mostly I prepared my character, because I don't think anyone can prepare themselves for what it's like to be in prison. I think that's a big part of the experience going to prison, is the place has an effect on you. You don't really, you don't bring your prison self out. You kind of survive however you can. And so in this cell, the first time I'm in it and about to roll, this feeling hits you because the set looks like a real prison. It's every detail down to the bolts in the wall are accurate. And so I go into this room and the door closes, and it's a heavy metal door, and I'm also claustrophobic, but you just feel completely panicked. Like, I'm stuck in here and I can't get out. I mean, obviously I know it's a TV show, but that first time before anyone opens the door and you want to check and make sure it doesn't lock and everything like that, it does something to your body. It's a reality check. And I think that is what it's like to be in prison for the first time. I have no idea. I could never speak on it. But if that's anything what it's like, it's terrifying. But then they say cut, and then you go get coffee, and you chit-chat. And eventually, over time, I acclimated to it being a work environment.
And what's interesting is you mentioned it was kind of a comedy show.
It's a comedy. It's a very funny show.
A very funny show, it's, with everything that goes on. Your comedic background, did that help you with the character?
Actually, this is the first comedic role I've ever done. Yeah. The irony is that, irony or coincidence, is that I took a stand-up class the summer of 2017, which was my first dream I ever had from when I was 5. You might have heard me mention. But I didn't get the courage to do it until 2017, which I won't tell you how many years that is between when I've been 5, but it's a long time. And so that summer I took a class, and the day that I auditioned for Orange is the New Black was the day I was going to do my first comedy show. Like at the end of the class, you kind of have a graduation. And during that graduation that was the first show. So I wasn't really thinking much about the audition. I mean, I prepared for it, I did it, I had fun. But really I was like panicked about the show and getting ready and making sure I had everything right. And then the next day I got a phone call that I got the job. And I didn't even know what my manager was calling me.
Wonderful.
Like,
get a job like that. Wow.
Yeah, and they say it's when you're not thinking about it.
Is your first TV role as a series?
No. I've done TV roles before, but most of my work has been very strongly dramatic. My first role was on Blacklist, and I played a woman who gets, an African woman who gets shot. And I've played a lot of really heavy, dark.
Blacklist. Love that show.
Yeah. So I've done that, Law and Order, some kind of guests, not guest spots, but like day player stuff. This was my first recurring role and my first guest star role. So, and it was great that it was a comedy too. Yeah.
Is it a challenge to do a series to keep that character every time you shoot, to keep in character week after week and month after month?
I've tried to explain this because there's been so many jobs that I didn't get. And that's, of course, one of the challenges of being an actor is like, you don't get, are we good on time? Yeah.
We're good on time. But actually, we have to take a public service announcement break.
Well, I will get back to that question when we get back.
So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this public service announcement.
Here. Why should you include avocados as part of your family's balanced diet? It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. Number 1. Avocados fill you up. Avocados contain unsaturated fats, good fats your body needs to help with the absorption of key nutrients.
Me hungry right now.
Number 2.
Avocados are good for you.
Avocados are naturally cholesterol and sodium free, plus they contain nearly 20 vitamins and nutrients.
Me need vitamins and nutrients. And number 3, avocado delicious.
Try avocados in place of ingredients higher in saturated fat. Avocados taste great in sandwiches, salads, and even in baked goods like cookies.
Avocado cookies? This match made in heaven.
We are back on track with Sipiwe, and we're going to talk about Orange is the New Black and her acting career, which is fascinating. And we were sort of talking about auditions. That must be
Right.
extremely hard for an actor.
It is very hard, but you've got to find your way in. And I think that, you know, you've got to find a way to enjoy auditioning, so because it's the majority of your work as an actor. It's what you will always be doing until you get to be an A, maybe B-list celebrity and just get offers. But one should always be ready to audition, and, you know, as many times as they want you to. It's the job. And you asked me before about, is it hard to keep the character going?
Yes, going.
And the way it relates to auditions is that, you know, I've auditioned for hundreds and hundreds of roles, and I've not gotten hundreds of roles, and it's devastating, especially the ones that you just know you're right for, and you just feel it, and you felt so good in the room, and it doesn't go your way.
How do you cope with that psychologically when you don't get a role that you really, really, really want?
It's, you know, it's like getting your heart broken. It hurts, and then you get over it, and then you go on to the next thing. And what I was going to say is that when a role is right for you, and this is the first one that's been right for me, that's been recurring, I feel like the sky is the limit. I mean, I feel like I think of a million ways I could say the line, and I think after they say cut, that's it, we know, we got everything we need. I'm like, no, I didn't try it this way and that way. And I believe there must be something about that that means that's your role. And I hope to feel that way again, you know, but I really feel like in terms of finding the character, I feel like it's a constant excavation that I could do all day. Like, I could speakers her all day, try it a million different ways. Like, I want to just explore this character more and more and more and more. And I think that there's something to be said for that. And I've talked to my colleagues on the show about that. And I asked them, like, that thing you did, like, that was incredible.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? They're like, I don't even know. It just felt right. And you think no one else could play that role except for that guy right there. And that's because the role was right.
Well, you
for
get
him.
to know your character, and you get to know how your character is going to react.
Yeah.
And basically, when you're on camera, are you totally that character, or are you playing the character? Do you become that person?
I don't know. I don't know. I just know that when I'm thinking about being Adeola, I move and I talk and I think in a different way than I do. Like, I've heard people have told me that when they look, like I mean, listen, my role is fairly minor. I mean, she's sprinkled throughout, I think, for mostly comedic effect in season 6 especially. I've never been recognized or anything like that, but I would think that at some point I've been somewhere where someone who watches the show has been. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like, I've probably been on a subway train or in a restaurant or something where someone, and I've actually met someone for the first time who I told them on the show, they're like, oh my God, I've been talking to you, now that I say it, that I don't look like her. And she's me, you know, she's just me without, like, she's not dolled up like I am now or whatever. But we don't sound alike accent-wise. We don't move alike. We don't have any of the same characteristics.
But yet you feel the character, you feel them.
But yeah, I do.
So it's acting, but it's not acting in certain ways, because you.
It is acting.
You know.
Acting is just living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. So the prison and the people, that's all made up. But the feelings and the words and all of that is from a real person. I'm just pretending to be that person.
Do you
Does that
pull
make
from
sense?
life's experiences for the character, things in your life that kind of help you identify with the character or really act like the character?
Well, no, not in the situation where our lives are so different. I can't really compare a lot of things. I have to use my imagination. But the emotions, anger, sadness, joy, desire, frustration, those are things we've all felt before, and it comes from somewhere. And so you just take a little bit of wherever it comes from, and you put it in this container called Adeola, and you put it in the situation called prison, talking to this person, and you mix it up, and it comes out, you know. And then if it's not working, they'll tell you it's not working, and then
I'm sure they will, yeah.
They always tell you. They don't tell you when it's good. That's another thing I learned as an actor, because you want someone to tell you all the time as an actor, oh, you did such a good job, and nobody does that. No one's got time for that. So, but you do hear if you didn't get it right, like, try something else.
Is there a particular actor who influenced you the most?
Oh my gosh, so many. I mean, I just.
Who are some that kind of, you know, you looked at and you said, gee whiz. You know?
There's just so many. When it comes to TV, like the first person that came into my mind right now, which I don't really think that much about her. But I was thinking about Claire Danes for some reason. I find what she does on Homeland to be so incredibly skilled and difficult and nuanced. But there's so many TV shows that I watch that I just like am so enamored with so many people. I just got finished watching Black Monday, and Regina Hall's work on that show I thought was so funny, but also really, really real. And for this character especially, like now that this is my first time doing a comedic character, but I'm more interested in doing more comedy now, is finding where somebody is funny and a character, like, but not a caricature, and real but absurd at the same time. Like, I think that's a really interesting sweet spot, and I like watching people who are able to make that work. I'm watching Veep right now on HBO.
Right, yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
I am.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus's
great.
work on that is just, I mean, she's real as it gets, and she's hilarious and absurd all at once. So the list goes on and on.
She's the only person who made it from Seinfeld successfully.
I
Because
think
all the other
Seinfeld's doing
actors
pretty well
really,
for
you know,
I don't
did their
think
series,
Seinfeld's hurting any.
but she really made it after Seinfeld, which
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and I think you also have to find ways to reinvent yourself.
How does your family react to seeing you on television?
They're very proud. They're definitely
Right.
very proud. I stop a little bit because I wear this turtle. This was my sister Kaliwe's turtle, and unfortunately, during the time that I started Orange is the New Black, I started in August of 2017, and I never would have known that my life was about to change drastically within a couple of months. I actually lost my father in October of
gee,
2017,
I'm sorry to hear that.
and then 2 months later lost my sister Kaliwe in December of
Oh, my
2017.
God.
Both health related, but both unexpected, and it's still devastating. And I just thank God that I had the opportunity before they passed, that they saw me get what to this date has been the biggest role of my career. And they were so proud. I mean, those two people were my biggest. I have a lot of cheerleaders, thank God, but I also, none were really quite as big and large and loud as those guys. So I think about them all the time, and I really dedicate my work on the show, at least, to them.
And you have 2 children, right? Am I correct?
I have one child.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So far.
Take 2. You have one child.
Yeah.
And how old?
She's 3.
She's 3.
Mhm.
She's 3 years old. Is she able to watch the show a little bit and see mommy on TV?
She doesn't watch the show because you probably saw
Yeah,
it
it's
has
kind
a
of-
very
yeah,
edgy
yeah.
and adult theme. So she's definitely not allowed to watch it, but she's familiar with it. She knows when I go to work, or when I did go to work because the show's wrapped now. She knows when I go to work I'm going to Orange is the New Black. So she says it sometimes when she doesn't want me. She's like, I don't want you to go to Orange is the New Black. So she's been to visit me on set.
Right.
So she got to see the prison. My husband came too, but unfortunately not many people were paying attention to him. She saw my cell, and she saw, you know, D Block, which is where I am, and she met everybody on set, and she was a huge sensation. She got to try on all the wigs. She tried on
She
Tasty's
must have
wig,
loved that.
and
Wow.
she met Dasha, who demands that she calls her TT Dasha, and she was just a part of the show. I mean, she got makeup, so she thinks that what I do is so much fun, and she's right.
Wow.
It's great work if you can get it. So,
It is, yeah. How do you juggle family and acting?
very by the skin of our teeth.
Skin of your teeth.
There's no magic formula. I will say that TV is a good gig for a mom because it's very part-time. Theater I have not been able to get back into because it's a much more demanding schedule with long rehearsals during the day and late shows in the evening, and you're sometimes out of town. But with TV, you go for a day and you shoot maybe for a few hours, and so I just have to find childcare on those days because my husband also works a lot.
As an actor, do you prefer theater or television?
Like I said, right now TV is more of a fit for our
Right.
family, and it's a lot of fun. I love being on set. I'm kind of in a romance with TV right now, I have to
Yeah.
say. TV is the one that's got me right now, but you know, I love the stage when I can, you know, and I hope that I am able to. I know that there will be more time in life eventually, but that's.
What was the first Broadway show you ever saw? Is it
Oh gosh.
first one
The
that kind of
first
said,
one
I'd
that
like
comes
to
to
do this?
mind is Rent.
Rent.
I believe it was Rent. I visited New York City when I was in 7th grade.
7th grade.
And oh my God, that was an incredible trip. I couldn't believe I was in Times Square, just like, I still feel that way when I get off the train
Yeah.
from Penn Station. I'm just
Yeah.
like, anything could happen. The big city of dreams. And I'm just, going to auditions or going to work or something
Now you're
like
watching your first Broadway show.
that. Rent, yeah.
Did you say to yourself, I want to do this. This is what I want to do.
Well, I've never been in musical theater, but I'm sure I had a feeling
But
like
that feeling of
It's-
Broadway.
It's that same feeling I had when I was a kid and I discovered that you could go to theater camp or go to school for theater or even go to college for theater. Like, the world just kept opening up to this thing that I love, and I couldn't believe there it was and people were doing it. It's, when you have that thing that you're passionate about, it's just like you're firing on all cylinders, and I still feel that way when I see Broadway shows.
Tell me a little about, you did experimental and applied theater. What does the mean of that? And tell us a little bit about it.
I know both of those things sound kind of odd.
They
don't
do, yeah, I was wondering.
Experimental and applied.
And applied, yes.
It's a little bit of this, a little bit of
Yes,
that.
yes.
Applied theater is theater for purposes besides just entertainment. So drama therapy is a form of applied theater. Psychodrama is a form of applied theater. Theater for change, community-based theater. So theater, say there's a community-based theater that might go to a community to teach them about how to have better, safe sex practices, or how to, get clean water, or there's all kinds of different things. Now, the kind of theater I do, playback theater, is a form of applied theater.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So playback theater is an improvisational form of theater that kind of combines a little bit of experimental, a little bit of psychodrama, a little bit of dance and music and community-based theater for this form where we retell the stories of the audience. So for instance, we could do a show here at Columbia High School, and it could be for the students to talk about an issue that they have. Say there's been, I won't say anything that's not true because I don't want to put out bad PR, but say there was a particular issue that the school wanted to talk about, or they were celebrating diversity or something like that, celebrating what they love. And so we would get stories from the audience. So we start out with short forms like, how are you doing today? Oh, it was a rainy day and I thought it wasn't going to rain and I got wet on the way here and oh, I felt so awful starting school wet. So we do a little fluid sculpture. Right. Which is like a short little sound and movement, and it just captures that.
Interesting.
And as the show goes on, and shows are about an hour, hour and a half, the stories get longer. So we might tell a more longer story. As it was raining, I ran into an old friend, and I kind of used to have a crush on him, but then I didn't know if he liked him. We walked in together, and I was like, well. So we do a shorter.
Improvisational is.
Yeah. And so we just take it all on, and the company has about 12 people in it. So by the end of the show, we invite someone up just like this. We do like a little interview just like this, ask questions about a longer story that happened, and then the conductor, who's the person who elicits the story, says, let's watch, and we see the entire story on stage. But this time it's got music, it's got metaphor, it's got scarves and more nuanced. Wow. And the effect of this kind of theater is that people feel heard, and they don't just feel heard by the actors, but by everyone who watched the show, and they feel witnessed as well, and also less alone, because even though I'm the one telling the story, maybe there's other people who also have experienced that kind of loss or that kind of anxiety or that kind of whatever. Wow. So it's a really great way of creating dialogue and building community.
Our time is up. How could that be? Our time is up. We get some time back? No.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been a
pleasure to have you.
I don't think I had a chance to say thank you for having me. Thank you for lilistening. And just thank you for what you do. This is a great way of communicating.
It's the thank you hour.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm
thanks
grateful.
again. And this is Mike Sobel saying good night to you, and especially to you.